But I don't know how Sam Womack is going to come back and play immediately when he only got injured of week 2 of this year. He played week 1. He played like 20 snaps on special teams and 9 snaps on defense. He didn't play in front of Ambry Thomas, who was awful in that game, and he didn't play in front of Isaiah Oliver, who came in relief for Ambry Thomas, who was awful in front of that game. And then he got injured. It's hard for me to see him passing them up when he didn't pass them up over throughout the entirety of preseason or camp and didn't play above them in week 1, and both of them did not play very well.
Yeah, but you're assuming that that's on merit. I really think that has to do with the fact that the Niners made an expenditure in free agency, and they didn't want to admit. I mean, if it was based
but they benched that expenditure for Ambry Thomas.
But I mean, if it was based on performance, in my mind, and I think I know what the hell I'm watching, I felt Deshaun Jameson outplayed Oliver all summer and in the preseason. But Oliver is on the team, and Jameson was cut. So sometimes, there's other reasons. Sometimes GMs and front offices don't like to admit to their owner that, hey, man, we spent millions of dollars of your money for no good reason. And so I'm not sure that Oliver's better just because he played.
But I'm not saying he's better. But this idea that the Niners brass is somehow high on Womack where they're going to start him. Last year, they made him the nickel starter. He was the one starter that got benched after the catastrophic monsoon loss versus the Bears, and he got benched because of practice performance to Diamador Lenore. He was not seen playing again basically outside of special teams for the rest of his rookie year, which is natural. He's a rookie player. And then this year he came in, he didn't play nickel, which was what he was drafted to play and what he was starting at last year. He played exclusively on the outside. And he was started in front of by both Ambry Thomas and Isaiah Oliver, who frankly are not very good. And he might be better than them. But right now, the Niners brass has shown no faith for us to sit here and think, well, they're going to bring him back and start him. Because at every juncture, they've chose other players to play over him. And then in regards to Luter, I like the talent, but it's hard for me to be optimistic about what 5th-round corner have I ever heard of that's missed the entirety of an offseason and comes in halfway through the year and he's going to make an immediate impact, especially, first of all, starting with corner, a position where typically it's the higher round picks that are the best players at that position because corner has a physical requirement to play the position, right? The best corners have speed. You need certain amount of speed to play outside corner in the NFL because as good as you can be with everything, if you can get run by a receiver on any given play, it's hard to play corner on the outside. It's a requisite skill. You need speed to play outside. And because of that, it's hard for me to be optimistic and realistic that, hey, Luter might be a good player, but without an entire offseason, he's now going to come in the middle of the season for a Super Bowl contender. One, have the defense down without many reps to the discipline where he can execute his role correctly, but then 2, be physically returned to performance and be strong enough as a rookie to be able to compete and play on the outside as a 5th-round pick on the NFL. That seems like a monumental task for him. I don't know that that's realistic either. So I'm not so high.
He does run fast. I mean, and his 40 time was 4.46. This is a great athlete. This guy had a 1.57 10-yard split. He had a 40.5-inch vert. So we're at a 6.93 cone. He's a really good athlete, and he's mature. He's a married guy with kids. And he's played a lot of football at South Alabama. So we're also talking about a guy who's 6 feet, 190 pounds, with 33-inch arms and
super
10
long
and 3.
arms.
Yeah, huge hands, huge long arms, 6-foot corner. You're right, Vish, as far as it's a projection. But these two guys are there. I mean, they're, I don't want to say they're the only hope, but they're the primary hope because these guys, I guarantee you, are better than anybody on the beach right now. They're not going to be able to sign anybody off the street that's going to be better.
That I fully agree. Fully agree.
So I mean, we better hope they're good, right? I mean, we'll see. You're right, though. I mean, it's a little bit of a stab in the dark on both. But I will say this too about Womack. Womack is an interesting guy. He was a walk-on at Toledo that became all conference. I mean, I don't know more than a handful of guys that I can think of that got into the walk-on status when they came to college and walked off as all conference players. Now it is the MAC, it's not the ACC or the SEC, but still, it's a hell of a
football.
We'll see. We'll see what the
issue I have with Luter is less about Luter himself, but more about the 49ers and what they do schematically. I mean, the 49ers, it seems like for the last 3 years, every corner they've added to this team is supposed to be a press man corner, yet they don't play press man. It baffles me. They put these guys in constant soft coverages, playing off the line of scrimmage. Very rarely are they in a press man situation, but when you look across the board, that's what these guys were brought in to do. That's what Ambry Thomas was supposed to be. That's what Lenore was supposed to be. That's what Charvarius Ward did well at in Kansas City. It's like, at what point do you keep bringing these guys in to play a certain role and then actually allow them to play the role that they were supposed to play? I don't understand it.
Well, I mean, the thing is, Richard Sherman is arguing, I would tend to agree with him, that they play too much man coverage on early downs, and that's been the problem with their fits. Now, they do play man coverage from
He
off.
also said that they're stunting a lot. I'm not seeing that. Am I missing something?
Yeah, the stunting, I don't know. And then he said they're not mugging up the fronts, which I do see them mugging it up. Now, they mug it up and bring pressure probably more than they mugged it up and dropped out of it than before, because really the mugging up was just to create one-on-ones because they wanted to dictate where protection was getting slid. But in terms of the man coverage, I mean, the best example I can give you is the Joe Mixon touchdown run to ice the game. The run play is duo, I'm pretty sure, and he bounces it outside. And it's typical crack replace in man coverage for Diamador Lenore. The receiver, Trenton Irwin, cracks down on Bosa. He becomes the force player on the outside, and he gets lost inside. Mixon bounces duo all the way outside. It's a terrific run, and there's no player there to contain the edge because Bosa gets cracked. So it's little things like that, but ultimately, the one thing I'll say in regards to what you said and in regards to what he said and all of that, we can say, oh, they're playing too much man, they're playing too much press man, they're doing this, they're doing that. And I think that there's validity to all of it. And I think if we're giving a blame share piece to this, or we're giving a piece of the pie in terms of blame, the highest share will go to Steve Wilks, like you mentioned, just because schematically they don't seem to be doing the best stuff for any of their personnel, like you described. But the players are also not playing too well the last couple of weeks. Like the Fred Warners has not played as well as he's capable of playing, right? The Mooney Ward, some of these players. Javon Hargrave has been ghost town. Dre Greenlaw looks banged up and beaten. So they need those guys to play better as well. And I hope Steve Wilks calls a game that's more comfortable for them to enable that. But I agree with you that schematically, like they seem to be sometimes in press man, and then sometimes they seem to now become this complete two-shell soft zone team. It's like almost either or, right? Like the Dallas game, they were in press man for so much of that game, which was weird. And then you go to the Cleveland game or the Minnesota game, and the entire first half, they're almost playing soft zone coverage. So it's a weird balance of how they're mixing it up, or maybe they're not really mixing it up. I don't know, but there doesn't seem to be a sync in terms of how the players seem to be playing and what's being called.
The other thing, guys, I think is something that I'm looking for, and I don't know if you guys already hit on it before I got in here, but Shanahan, the one thing I do like about Shanahan, now some people think that Shanahan lies all the time. I think Shanahan's a terrible liar. I think he's actually.
I agree with that.
I agree. I think he's always telling us the truth.
I think he tells the truth more times than not. And that's why he said, Steve knows he messed up, because that's what he meant to say. He messed up, right? And on this week, the thing that jumped out to me was that he's like, he watched the film. Now, he's not the kind of guy that's going to be super critical at the podium in the post game. Like some guys are really critical in the post game at the podium. As CMC said, he's like, Kyle coaches off the film, and he'll watch the film, and then he brings the heat, right? Well, what did he say after he watched the film? He said, my team looks tired and slow. Well, you guys know that the bye week will probably alleviate the tired, but slow is slow. And I'm eager to see what the changes are that give them more speed. And I don't know if he was talking on the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side of the ball. I'm not really even sure. Was he talking about the D? Was he talking about his O? I thought there was some talk that maybe they would. I thought Paris Campbell might be a guy that they would try to get at the trade deadline, just because he is so fast and seems like he would be a great fit in the Niners system. But they didn't make the trade there. There was talk about Adoree Jackson. Lynch denied that They were interested, but he's plenty fast. I'm just kind of wondering if without a trade, where's this extra speed coming from? And
Deebo Samuel's return, right?
Is it Deebo? Is it Danny Gray? I'll tell you one thing I would personally like to see is if it's not Danny Gray, I'd like to see J.P. Mason put on the field at running back, and I'd like to see CMC flexed out as a receiver and see what that looks like. See if you get a little bit more speed there, and maybe Jair Brown instead of one of those two safeties. Maybe a little bit, maybe Womack instead of Oliver. But I mean, they gotta. I mean, I don't know if you saw Steve Smith talking about Oliver this week, but he just buried Oliver and said that he felt like Oliver was almost all their problems. So Oliver did make a lot of plays in that Bengal game, but he also got roasted by T. Higgins.
Who said that? Sorry,
Steve Smith. He said that, he felt like Oliver was being picked on. And my son put out that tweet that in the last 3 games, Oliver's given up 100% completion percentage to like 5 different receivers. So I don't know. I don't know. But that to me is like,
does Oliver look like he can run with anybody to you in terms of if he
I don't think he can run
coverage?
with anybody, and he doesn't look like he's got the ability to change direction and mirror anybody who's got multiple move ability.
He almost would be a candidate to convert to safety.
Yeah.
Right? Like the way
maybe but he doesn't have the hips to play safety.
And he's not a hitter.
Yeah.
In terms of tackling, by the way, I agree with that too. He's improved, and he's good when he's close enough, when he's able to make contact with the guy, he brings the guy down. But in terms of actually efficiently closing space and taking a smart angle, there are tackles that he should make that he doesn't even attempt because he's not in the correct position to make the tackle. And then it doesn't go down as a missed tackle. You don't realize it, but he can make the play. I do think, though, he played okay in the Minnesota game. I'll say that. The Cincinnati game, a little problematic. But the Minnesota game, I do think he played okay relative to the rest of the defense, especially given that I've been basically one of his biggest critics since the day he was signed. So I feel like a hater of him a little bit.
Well, I have to say I have a source with the team, and, I have it on good accord, Larry, that when he said my team looks slow, he was actually referring to the media members. So just kidding. All right.
Specifically a former scout in a Maryland shirt.
Yeah. He didn't name names or anything, but he was pretty clear. Yeah.
Well, I heard that Greg Cohn character runs a 4.5 40 and is faster than Richard Sherman.
He seemed kind of slow in his answer to Grant's question, to be honest.
Yeah, he did. He was tripped up. Cosmo says, what was Womack's injury? It was a knee injury. I don't know the details.
It was like some
meniscus, was it?
Was it meniscus? I thought it was some meniscus. Met something.